Hello everyone, and welcome back to the RimWorld Space Pirate series, my friends, in Save Our Ship 2, of course, where our torturous and marauding pirates are going through their day-to-day operations aboard the mighty Star Reaper, as well as the resource base upon the surface of this planet, where, at the moment, we are finally finishing up the last remaining car parts that are required for the new vehicle that we would like to build. This is the Toad, a heavy-duty super pod gas guzzling space shuttle, baby. Don't believe me? Take a look at this. This big old boy can carry 400 kilograms of cargo into space, and that does not include the passenger and the operator of the vehicle, which it can also carry. Which means it would make for a good escape pod, but also for our new steel hauling mule back into orbit. But without further ado, let's see just how well it does. Well, I would call that a successful mission, and the best part is we brought a lot more steel than usual. The only downside to this vehicle is it makes a lot of fire and a lot of smoke, causing one big light show around our base, and possibly attracting some unwanted attention. If the other horrific groups of pirates on this planet didn't know that we were here yet, they will definitely know now. But that shouldn't matter too much, as we're almost done completely stripping this land of its resources. These are actually the last remaining components that we found sticking out of the side of any mountain, and then of course we have a few remaining veins of steel. The only issue for us thus far is trying to haul it back into orbit, as we've discussed time and time again, but now with our brand new shuttle, that should be much easier, and we should be able to finish up with this base pretty quickly. Back aboard the Star Reaper, we had a combat supplier that was in orbit, and we would continuously demand that they hand over their cargo as an act of piracy, but they wouldn't even respond to this. So unfortunately, in the end, we would end up having to trade with them. The only problem is, if we demand that they hand over their stuff and they say, no, we can't actually do anything about it, I've come to realize, as when I go to the world map, there is no trade ship in orbit, so they must still be at a distance from us. Trade ships are mighty constructions, and many of them are most likely large enough to stay just on the outskirts of the solar system and ship any goods into whoever they're selling them to. Back at the resource camp though, I spotted a poor, starving rat sneaking a few nibbles of our beef. Sam felt so pitiful for this little creature, and also decided that maybe the captain is ready for a new pet after the loss of Jangles the moon monkey, and decided to try and tame him, and to my surprise, this ended up working. On the first try, no less. I probably shouldn't be surprised, as Sam has a really good animal skill. For the moment though, we're actually going to be whipping up more fuel for us to use, but also for us to trade with the other pirates of this planet, specifically the pigskin pirates. The reason being, of course, as they have good relations with us, and they are the largest pirate faction on the planet, being the remnants of the old government and whatnot, we ended up buying some plasteel off of them, and we would actually bring this back to the Star Reaper for a special little project that we had in mind. These resources would end up being used in a large array of ship capacitors, like batteries basically, but you know, more ship oriented and very, very much larger. We would also end up building a chem fuel generator, generating additional power on the ship that will actually allow us to fill up this ship capacitor and turn back on our high-tech research bench, which I've had to turn off for quite a while because we're just simply not getting enough power. And if the ship loses power, Adam will go offline and things will get very dark and very cold. But if we get some type of large ship coming to try and destroy us, it'll be a lot worse than cold and dark, because there won't be any damn ship left, so we're actually going to begin researching shields, which is a prerequisite to ship shields, as one could imagine, which is basically what we're gunning for in this episode. Another resource drop was coming in from the surface, but not only did they bring resources, they also brought our brand new pet, Rat 1, who was dying because he was suffocating, cause he's a rat in outer space. Sam scooped him up and clamped his little orifices shut so he didn't die out there, and then brought him inside, put him in the captain's quarters where he could heal up from those injuries. Whoopsie daisy. Now that we have the Toad on the surface hauling all our resources back up, we decided to bring one of the jet shuttle cars into the Star Reaper and leave it here in case the captain or someone maybe wants to take it for a little spin. But I felt that it would be a good time to finally name this vehicle and also maybe even paint it. The name of the vehicle will be the Bloody Baron. A very fitting name given the paint job, and this comes from our good friend Zaba4321, who was saying that we should name it that because it's red like blood and is a car for nobles. Well, noble pirates maybe, but I do really like this name, and of course if you guys have any other names for our other vehicles or anything that you'd like to name, be sure to let me know. Now that we have a shuttle back aboard the Star Reaper, I decided to wake up Gaines and Bad Luck and let them do a little bit of training and maybe even equip some heavy weaponry, as I want them to be our boarding group for the time being if we were to get attacked. Kind of like a heavy-duty strike team that kills all the crew aboard and steals the ship. I felt that they would work good together, seeing how they were on the same squad as ODSTs. A few days later, after a little bit more trading with other pirates, we would end up having enough resources to build ourselves yet another cannon on the side of the ship. And I'm very glad that we did, as just in time for a few days later after that, we ended up having a simple scow ship approaching that was looking to attack us, it would seem. With 3 large laser turrets and 4 gigantic engines, it was coming right for us. There was absolutely no time to waste. We were scrambling to try to wake up Gaines and Bad Luck and send them into the shuttle bay where they could jump into the jet shuttle and get the hell out there and try to save our asses. As quick as lightning, they were scuttling out the shuttle bay doors as the ship was taking heavy damage. They were off and on their way over there. However, the only little hiccup in this plan is that there is a good distance between the Star Reaper and this Sow ship that is attacking us, so it's going to take a hot moment. In the meantime, the enemy ship would continue bombarding us with massive laser blast. Sure be a good time to have that shield right about now for the ship. Oh well, we'll just have to make do with what we have, I suppose. Even if that entails taking one hell of a beating for a while. Finally though, Bad Luck and Gaines arrived at the enemy ship, and immediately after stepping out of the shuttle, they were met with the crew of said ship. They were completely out in the openness of space with zero cover, taking every bullet that was being fired at them. Because of this, Bad Luck would end up dying, leaving Gaines to fend for herself, which ultimately ended up in her falling. Now floating in the void of space, held only by the artificial gravity of the enemy ship, it seemed that all hope had been lost. With Bad Luck dead and Gaines rapidly bleeding out, our window for any type of victory was quickly closing. But finally, reinforcements from the planet's surface had arrived. Sam and Henry were finally here, delayed by the distance from the planet's surface to the ship, of course. Using grenades and rockets, we would beat the enemy ship like a drum, forcing them to come outside and face us. Things were getting quite messy, as we were having to take cover behind our shuttle, and they were taking cover behind our other shuttle, and we would end up destroying it, unfortunately. We noticed in the corner of our eyes that Gaines had already bled to death, but with the enemies rapidly approaching, we had no time to focus on that, only surviving and taking them down. We had killed most of their crew by this point, we suspected, but there could be many more on the inside, so instead of trying to hack these airlocks, we decided to just continue blowing our way through, and you know, of course this ended up working out for us. After entering what remained of the bridge here, we decided to destroy the laser turrets next to prevent any further damage to the Star Reaper. Once the enemy's offensive capabilities were taken offline, it would then begin to try and retreat, so we would have to begin breaching the airlocks to try and ensure that that does not happen. Eventually, we had managed to break into the control room. There were 2 dapper lads sitting in there, so we chucked a grenade in between them, killing the green one, and then a rocket finished off the last remaining one. And with that, Sam could finally finish hacking into the ship, granting us access to all of its systems, making this ship truly ours now. Yet another milestone in our pirating escapades, our largest ship yet that we've managed to take. Though, our hearts were heavy with the losses of our friends. We may have managed to take this sow for our own, but the price that we paid was more than we would have been willing to otherwise. Our comrades' lives were invaluable, as was all the damage that was actually done to the Star Reaper. As you can see, as I mentioned earlier, it took one hell of a beating, looking like a tortilla chip that was dropped on the ground and busted several times. It's also worth mentioning that we lost our Critter Sleep casket as well as a few of our Cryo Sleep caskets, but luckily no one was in them, except for Fold or Fouled or whatever the slave's name was that we brought in into space. I wasn't really all that worried about him though. He literally meant nothing to us. In the meantime though, we had quite a bit of work to do. We needed to refuel our shuttle so that we could get it mobile once more, and then we would need to begin actually bringing all of the items inside our new SAO ship. That way when we move it over to the Star Reaper, all these things will come with us. Otherwise we would have to make several trips back and forth bringing the items from here to there. It took a hot moment, but we managed to get it done, and we now have the SAO added to our collection. It was also around this time that I realized our slip space engine had been destroyed in the scuffle, and so it looks like we're going to be sticking around this planet for quite a while. As long as the UNSC doesn't end up rearing their ugly heads at some point, we should be quite alright staying here, I think. But either way, for the time being, we're going to put all of our effort into repairing the hull of the Star Reaper because it has been torn to absolute shreds. As you could imagine though, we were sure to give Tiny as much leave as he needed and as many breaks as he desired to visit and pay his respects to his wife. Our hearts broke for him, but they both knew the consequences and possibilities of the life of a pirate. We began deconstructing and salvaging as many resources as we could from the front section of the SAO. As you can imagine, we plan on using it as a new portion of the Star Reaper. The idea here is going to be for us to attach it to the back of the Star Reaper, since the SAO already has engines, more than what we currently had on the Reaper anyhow. It also already has its own RCS thrusters, so we really didn't need ours anymore, and it extends the ship even further. But this is merely a drop in the bucket as to how large these ships can get. It would now be time for us to begin focusing on repairing this section of the ship, since we done so much damage to it after infiltrating it, of course. I'm not really sure though as to what I want to do with the interior portion of this ship. I know there's a lot of room for crew quarters and stuff here already. Maybe we end up using it as a brig, but I'm not positive. You guys let me know if you have any suggestions or ideas for that. Now that the majority of our repairs and construction has been finished, we are going to be sending Tiny and Porkins out on a mission of their own back to the surface of the planet. The two of them have been tasked with breaking open the frozen ground and digging a hole to bury bad luck, as well as poor gains. A bittersweet moment. Who better to do this than Tiny himself? Very sad, but also a great honor. Back aboard the Reaper, Ryan was working hard at researching those ship shields that we were going to add to the front section of the ship. Just as well, Sam was working hard at cooking some meals with the abundance of beef we've received from the surface. Truly a fine-tuned machine. We had also been doing some trading here and there with other pirates for some resources like plastic and advanced components. I also want to mention that we actually have a hull foam distributor, and this was originally built with the Reaper when we first made the ship, but I had never bought any canisters or made any canisters to fill it up, so that's something we'll end up needing to do. This machine will actually automatically patch holes that come up in our hull when it's being damaged and or destroyed during battles. Something else we decided to do, since the ship is so large now and we have an abundance of resources, is build a large nuclear engine onto the back. This new engine will give us much more thrust and thus is much more fitting for a ship of this size. Sometime later, we finally finished our extensive research into ship shields. Now with that completed, we'll need a new project and we're going to begin working on plasma turrets. Once that's completed, we'll be able to replace the one that we lost during the battle. For now though, our current construction project is going to be a new shield generator in the front half of the Reaper. Now that we have two of these shield generators, we'll need some way to distribute the extra heat, maybe with a coolant pump or perhaps some more heat sinks, but we'll deal with that later. As you can see though, our two new shields completely encompass the entire starship, and they even overlap a little bit there in the middle for some added protection. Now I could just use one of these and put directly in the middle of the ship and just expand its reach to encompass the entire thing, but I like this better. Now that we can ensure that we have ample protection, I decided that I would like to maybe invade one of these other pirate factions' bases. First up, we have the Pigskin here. We're going to observe their area, not necessarily attack it, but just kind of take a look and see maybe with what we're dealing with. The captain and Zap Zap began discussing their options. It would be the perfect surprise attack, as the Pigskins here believe that we're compadres with them, if you will, that we wouldn't even dare attack them, but we most definitely would if we really wanted to. However, the decision was made that it may be more beneficial to attack an enemy faction of pirates like the Waste waster pirates on this planet. Besides, this area here for the pigskins is very mountainous, and there's probably extremely limited space for us to actually put the ship down. Unlike, on the other hand, at a nearby waster base not too far from the pigskin one, there was a completely flat land near the base where we could actually park the ship and begin firing upon them with our large cannons, as well as a ground assault. And it is because of these factors that we have decided that we will indeed invade. First though, we will need a little bit of preparation time by getting our pirates out of their cryo sleep pods and giving them some time to recover from the sickness that follows. Some of them have been in their pods since the beginning of this planet, so we'll have to catch them up. Once everyone was up to speed and not puking all over the place anymore, we would then allow them to go through and equip any weapons that they would like, and or that they may need for the battle. Ever since we arrived at this backwater planet, we've been silent, in the shadows, mining our resources from its surface, with only the occasional handful of scuffles from its inhabitants. But no more. Today, we make ourselves known. The torturous marauders are here on this shit show of a planet, and we intend on running things, by God. We will make an example of these waster pirates, and nobody will get in our way. Let's get this party started. The captain, Zap Zap, Adam, Ryan, and Tiny would all begin setting coordinates to land on the surface near the base. Sounds easy enough, but this type of thing takes a little bit of finesse. If done incorrectly, we could end up dropping the ship right on top of the city, causing some immense damage to the hull. Sure, we would end up killing a lot of our enemies, but I don't think it'd be worth it. As we began plummeting through the atmosphere, our marauders would go into the airlock and begin preparing for their assault. Those of you with a keen eye, though, are probably wondering where Sam and Henry are. Well, my friends, they would have actually taken the Toad by this point down to the surface to begin getting acquainted with our new friends. The idea here was to try and draw out the enemy from around these small hills and entice them into coming out into the open area where the Reaper would be landing. And this ended up working out perfectly. We almost landed on top of most of their forces. They were sitting ducks. Our marauders rushed out like wild tigers hunting their prey, killing everyone they came into contact with. And with the mighty Captain Udo leading them, along with first mate Zap Zap, nobody would stand in our way. Even Tiny would get in on the fun. Sure, he's incapable of violence, but what if he were to maybe accidentally run over several of these waster pirates? Surely that wouldn't go against his rules. As these filthy cowards who dare call themselves pirates tried to run away, Tiny would run several of them over, killing one of them. Originally, we were a little bit worried about Tiny chipping in. Sure, he's good at construction, but did he have the guts to kill someone? And now we find out he does. Funny enough, he really likes it. With the wasters fleeing what remains of their home, this would be an ample opportunity for us to take a few prisoners. One of which, funny enough, was a jackal, which is UNSC and human slang for a Kigkyar. If everything goes to plan and this works out in our favor, we very well may have our own jackal sniper as part of the crew. But that'll be in the future. As for the present, we are currently bombarding the city with our cannons, destroying mortars and any other remaining defenses that they may have at their disposal. Just as well, later into the night, we would enter the city on foot to begin clearing out every single building of these wasters. Many of the pigskin slaves would come floundering to us begging for help, but we weren't here to emancipate them. We're not the breakers of chains. We're here on our own volition. However, not all of the slaves belong to the pigskin. Some belong to the wasters. Can't have them getting in the way of our looting and pillaging, now can we? We would continue this process, rinse and repeat all throughout the night, going into several of these buildings, basically all of these buildings, occasionally discovering some useful items that we could take back aboard the ship, as well as some more slave quarters, but we never found any more slaves belonging to the wasters, so we just left them alone. However, at one point during the night, we found what seems to be some type of sacred burial site for their loved ones or ancestors. Well, by morning, we were launching rockets at it and blowing it all to hell, to smithereens, and just leaving the carcasses if they ended up surviving the blast. Did we need to do that? No. Was it extremely disgraceful desecrating these graves? Yes, but you know, I mean, we are trying to send a message. Something tells me they might get the point. Now that we know the city is safe and no enemies are going to pop out from behind a door and just ambush us, we could start collecting all of these goodies, mostly clothing and food such as chocolate. We also had plenty of weapons on shelves, such as these these mortar shells that are going to come in handy. Truth be told though, if I could be completely honest, we have a lot of weapons, we have a lot of food, we have a lot of stuff in general that we need to carry back, not to mention all the things that we're going to have to deconstruct and then carry back the steel and components and yada yada yada. The part I'm going to be honest about is I think raiding this place is the easy part just as well as it will be anytime we attack any other settlements. The hard part is going to be trying to get all this stuff back onto the ship. Perhaps though, as we continue to expand our ship, we can also continue growing our crew in numbers, and that will make the process much easier, I'm sure. We could always build an army of lifter mechs who could do all the heavy lifting after we're done raiding. Who knows, there's so much potential. Finally though, after a day or two of deconstructing and doing a bunch of hauling, this town was finally barren. It was time for us to leave, but before we do so, we would wait on the waster reinforcements to arrive. We wanted to ensure that they saw what happened here and who was responsible for it. We would even give them a quick little taste of our cannon barrage, and then off into the stars we would go, flying into the atmosphere, leaving behind nothing more than a barren spot of dead plants where the ship sat for several days. Some of the wasters were going around building to building looking for survivors. Others were enraged and began punching the walls. Actually, the majority of them seemed enraged, punching the walls. Oh well. I wish I could say that I was surprised, but when you're foolish enough to underestimate the torturous marauders, you'll do just about anything, I suppose. Back on board the Reaper, we were doing pretty well for ourselves, but we did notice that we had some stowaways. Turns out many of those slaves that were friendly with us had stowed away on board the ship and were trying to get away from the wasters. We may or may not have tricked them into walking out the airlock and beginning to suffocate in the void of space. Or maybe, just maybe, hear me out on this, maybe they slipped and fell on their way out of the airlock and hit their heads. Oh, those poor silly people. Looks like this one can hold their breath a little bit longer than the others. After we took out the trash though, it was time for us to celebrate our big victory with a party in the control room. Probably not the best spot for it, to be honest with you. Somebody tips over a beer on the console and then all of a sudden we're crashing back through the atmosphere. We do indeed have a lot to celebrate though. One of our first big victories, taking down an entire settlement of a rival faction as well as capturing our very own Jackal sniper. Oh, the future is bright, baby. But we have many more settlements to raid and to take down, and many more places to pillage and loot, making for many more incredible stories to tell our next generation of marauders. Ah, little one, if your mother could see us now, she would be so proud. Quite the beast that we've built here for ourselves, our ship, our faction, our crew, and our family. We're proud of ourselves. During this time, Zap Zap is toiling away in her laboratory to try and get those plasma turrets finished. But while she's working on her research, we are going to be working on some RCS thrusters on the front side of the ship. This was actually recommended to me by our good compadre Sedelta Command 7169, who said that doing this would actually make us much less vulnerable to long-ranged attacks. I sure hope you're right, though I'm fairly certain that you are, because it does make a lot of sense. Having RCS thrusters on the side would allow us to move in that direction, and we already very much struggle with long-ranged attacks. Something that we haven't struggled with just yet, but I do worry about in the future, is enemies actually coming into our ship and boarding us. And that is exactly why we planned ahead when we attacked the Waster settlement and we stole many of their turrets that were still intact. That way we could put them on board the ship in our important rooms. Speaking of turrets, Zap Zap has blessed us with some more mighty research into plasma turrets, meaning that we can finally complete our secondary plasma turret that was lost, making us an even more fierce and mighty vessel once more. We would also contact a combat supplier and sell off many of the weapons that we had gotten from attacking the Wasters. I'm sure they'll go to a good cause or home somewhere among the stars, perhaps even fueling some type of rebellion on a foreign planet, who knows. Now that we've sold all those off though, I thought it might be a good time for us to build a proper recreation room for our captain and our crew. Unfortunately, our holodeck was destroyed destroyed at some point, but luckily we do have a tube television as well as a chess table for now. We would also end up building a machining table. The first order of business with the machining table is to actually begin creating some biohull canisters. That way we can fill up our biohull machine, and basically what this is, as I mentioned earlier, if we ever have a puncture in our hull, it should automatically fill that hole for us, which should keep anyone in the room without a spacesuit on from getting their eyeballs sucked out of their urethra. Now we delve into the realm of self-sufficiency though, because we're actually also going to be creating our own uranium fuel pods. These fuel pods are what we use for our fission reactors on the ship. Basically, this is what keeps our lights on, and it only requires a little bit of steel and uranium to create the fuel, thankfully. Continuing with our theme of expansion and building though, we would end up building a mech gestator, and just as well we would also end up building an encoding bench. That way we can make the components to actually create the mechs. The first mech that we're going to be creating is a sweeper bot, a clean sweeper as it were. I know, you were probably expecting something a bit more epic with some weapons like at least a scout droid or something like that, but I'm afraid the ship gets very dirty and somebody's gotta sweep it. All of a sudden though, the Star Reaper's sensors went off. It would seem that we've detected another ship, though it doesn't seem to be attacking us. It had just exited slip space and is now orbiting the planet not too far from the Star Reaper. Initial scans showed it as wreckage, but upon further inspection, it would appear that we are actually detecting several life forms aboard. There does still appear to be power on the ship. It is possible the crew may still be alive. Maybe we should send somebody out to investigate. Before we end the episode today, my friends, we actually have a little bit of lore from our friend Neon1775-LJ9VF, who was saying that for Zap Zap, during a mining trip with her parents, their ship had been boarded by Covenant grunts. The parents of Zap Zap tried to fight off the attackers, but their attempts were futile. Both lost their lives, but during the battle, Zap Zap found a plasma pistol that had slid in front of her, and that was the first time that she did the Zap Zap. A very sad yet fitting background story for poor Zap Zap. I think that would also explain as to why she was an orphan and also how she got her Covenant armor. Next up, we also have some lore from our friend Mr. Zero, I suppose is how you pronounce that, saying that they believe that the lore reason why these small fighters and other ships are attacking a much larger ship, which is the Star Reaper of course in this case, is because the UNSC has put a bounty out on our ship, which is valued to be somewhere in the millions of silver. We have killed Spartans before, not only one, but several, and I think that that makes a lot of sense. Next up, we have a comment from our compadre, Epic Assassin 8502, who was correcting a mistake that I made last episode. They say that UNSC warships aren't black. I believe they mean green because the warships are black, as they further stated later, and the smaller aircrafts are green. And I did make that mistake last episode when discussing some lore where I was saying that the starship that had crashed on the original planet we were at couldn't be a UNSC warship because it wasn't green. But as discussed, I could very well be wrong, and I think that I actually am wrong because we did find many of the crew members who were carrying UNSC weapons. I think I'll chalk it up to the fact that most of our pirates have never seen a UNSC warship, minus bad luck and Gaines, who very well may not have had the chance to tell them that the warships are different colors. But I'd like to thank you guys for watching this episode today. I love you guys ever so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.